One book, one extraordinary life. 48 chapters of saints, science, and the search for God.
I'm Kai.
And I'm Maya.
And this is our take on Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter by chapter.
A man in a loincloth walks onto the patio, strikes the edge of a solid wall with its fist, and a brick crashes to the floor. The sky peers boldly through the gap, and two teenage boys standing there realize if he can do that to a wall, he can definitely do that to a tiger.
Chapter 6, The Tiger Swami. And this chapter reads like an adventure novel. It's got a hero with superhuman strength, a villain prince with a sadistic streak, a royal Bengal tiger in a cage, and a prophecy that ties the whole thing together. But underneath the spectacle, there's a teaching about the relationship between mind and body, and what happens when physical power meets spiritual awakening.
So the chapter begins with Mukunda's school friend Chandy announcing that he's discovered the Tiger Swami's address. Let us visit him tomorrow. And Mukunda's eager. He'd heard stories about this man, who in his pre-monastic life had caught and fought tigers with his naked hands. A boyish enthusiasm over such remarkable feats was strong within him.
The next day dawns wintry cold, and they set out for Bhowanipur, outside Calcutta. After much vain hunting, they arrive at the right house. The door holds 2 iron rings, which Mukunda sounds piercingly. And despite the clamor, a servant approaches with leisurely gait. And his ironical smile implied that visitors, despite their noise, were powerless to disturb the calmness of a saint's home.
And I love what Yogananda says about the wait. India's unwritten law for the truth seeker is patience. A master may purposely make a test of one's eagerness to meet him. And then he adds, with typical humor, this psychological ruse is freely employed in the West by doctors and dentists.
Finally, they're summoned into a sleeping apartment, and the sight of the famous Sohang Swami, the Tiger Swami, affects them strangely. With bulging eyes, they stood speechless. They had never before seen such a chest or such football-like biceps. On an immense neck, the Swami's fierce yet calm face was adorned with flowing locks, beard, and mustache. A hint of dove-like and tiger-like quality shone in his dark eyes. He was unclothed, save for a tiger skin about his muscular waist.
A hint of dove-like and tiger-like qualities. I love that detail. The tenderness and the ferocity sitting right next to each other in the same pair of eyes. And he's wearing a tiger skin, not as a trophy, as an identity. This is a man who understood tigers from the inside.
They express their admiration for his prowess in what Yogananda calls the extraordinary feline arena. Will you not tell us, please, how it is possible to subdue with bare fists the most ferocious of jungle beasts, the royal Bengals? And the Swami's response is both humble and startling. My sons, it is nothing to me to fight tigers. I could do it today if necessary. He gives a childlike laugh. You look upon tigers as tigers. I know them as pussycats.
Pussycats, royal Bengal tigers. And think about what that word choice implies. He's not saying tigers aren't dangerous. He's saying that in the landscape of his consciousness, they register differently than they would for an ordinary person. His perception has been retrained. The fear response that would paralyze most people simply doesn't fire in him. And Mukunda, being Mukunda, pushes further. Swamiji, I think I could impress my subconsciousness with the thought that tigers are pussycats, but could I make tigers believe it? Which is actually a brilliant question. Self-confidence is one thing. Convincing a 400-pound predator is another.
And the Swami gives a fascinating answer. Of course, strength also is necessary. One cannot expect victory from a baby who imagines a tiger to be a house cat. Powerful hands are my sufficient weapon. And to demonstrate, he takes them to the patio, strikes the edge of a wall, and a brick crashes to the floor. The sky peers boldly through the gaping lost tooth of the wall.
Mukunda is staggered. He who can remove mortared bricks from a solid wall with one blow must surely be able to displace the teeth of tigers. And then comes a passage that I think is essential. The Swami explains the difference between mere physical strength and the kind of power he possesses. He says that a number of men have physical power like his, but still lack cool confidence. Those who are bodily strong but not mentally stalwart may find themselves fainting at mere sight of a wild beast bounding freely in the jungle. The tiger in its natural ferocity is vastly different from the opium-fed circus animal.
And then he goes further. many a man with Herculean strength has nonetheless been terrorized into abject helplessness before the onslaught of a royal Bengal. Thus, the tiger has converted the man, in his own mind, to a state as nerveless as the pussycats.
So the tiger-pussycat transformation works both ways. The tiger can make the man feel like a pussycat, or the man can make the tiger feel like one. It all depends on who holds the mental ground. And then he delivers what I think is the most important speech in the chapter, about the relationship between mind and body.
Mind is the wielder of muscles, the Swami says. The force of a hammer blow depends on the energy applied. The power expressed by a man's bodily instrument depends on his aggressive will and courage. The body is literally manufactured and sustained by mind. Through pressure of instincts from past lives, strengths or weaknesses percolate gradually into human consciousness. They express as habits, which in turn ossify into a desirable or an undesirable body.
And then he says something that connects directly to the core teaching about consciousness being fundamental. Outward frailty has mental origin. In a vicious circle, the habit-bound body thwarts the mind. If the master allows himself to be commanded by a servant, the latter becomes autocratic. The mind is similarly enslaved by submitting to bodily dictation.
This is consciousness as fundamental, playing out through the physical body. The tiger Swami isn't just strong because he has big muscles. He has big muscles because his mind commanded the body into that form. The will came first, the body followed.
And then he tells him his story. His earliest ambition was to fight tigers. But here's the twist. His will was mighty, but his body was feeble. And the boys can hardly believe it, looking at this titan with Atlantean shoulders. It was by indomitable persistency and thoughts of health and strength that I overcame my handicap, the Swami says. Mental vigor was the real subduer of royal Bengals.
And Mukunda asks, "Do you think, revered Swami, that I could ever fight tigers?" And Yogananda notes this was the first and the last time that the bizarre ambition ever visited his mind. The Swami says yes, but then redirects beautifully. But there are many kinds of tigers. Some roam in jungles of human desires. No spiritual benefit accrues by knocking beasts unconscious. Rather be victor over the inner prowlers.
The inner prowlers, the tigers of desire, anger, fear, attachment, those are the real opponents. And that line is doing so much work. It acknowledges the physical accomplishment and simultaneously says it doesn't matter. The real battle is internal. But then Mukunda asks to hear how the Swami changed from a tamer of wild tigers to a tamer of wild passions. And the tiger Swami falls into silence. Remoteness came into his gaze, summoning visions of bygone years. Yogananda discerned his slight mental struggle, and then the Swami finally smiled in acquiescence.
The tone shift there is remarkable, from brash confidence to something quieter, because what comes next proved the saint right.
Not long after, the Swami visited Cooch Behar, and his fame preceded him. Village urchins functioning like final editions of a newspaper, the women's speech bulletins circulating from house to house. Within a few hours, the whole city was in a state of excitement, and as he walked the streets, he would catch whispered comments from the curious crowd. "This is the man who fights wild tigers. Has he legs or tree trunks? Look at his face. He must be an incarnation of the king of tigers himself."
And then policemen arrived on galloping horses with an invitation from the Prince of Cooch Behar. The next day, the Swami was escorted in a magnificent coach drawn by 4 horses. A servant held an ornate umbrella to protect him from the scorching sunlight. The prince himself was at the palace door, offered his own gold-brocaded seat, smilingly taking a simpler chair. And the Swami thought, all this politeness is certainly going to cost me something.
And he was right. The prince's real purpose emerged quickly. My city is filled with the rumor that you can fight wild tigers with nothing more than your naked hands. Is it a fact? And when the Swami confirms it, the prince becomes insulting. I can scarcely believe it. You are a Calcutta Bengali, nurtured on the white rice of city folk. Be frank, please. Have you not been fighting only spineless, opium-fed animals? His voice was loud and sarcastic, tinged with provincial accent.
And then the challenge. Fight his newly caught tiger, Raja Begum. The name itself means prince, princess, so named because this beast possessed the combined ferocity of tiger and tigress. If the Swami wins, he gets the tiger, several thousand rupees, and many other gifts. If he refuses, the prince will blazon his name throughout the state as an impostor.
And the Swami's insolent words struck like a volley of bullets. He shot an angry acceptance. Half risen from his chair in excitement, the prince sank back with a sadistic smile.
The Swami was reminded of the Roman emperors who delighted in setting Christians in bestial arenas. And here's a detail I found chilling. The prince wouldn't even let him see the tiger in advance, perhaps fearing he might try to hypnotize or drug it. And when the Swami left the palace, he noted with amusement that the royal umbrella and panoplied coach were now missing. The politeness had served its purpose.
And during the week of preparation, the Swami learned through his servant that the prince had supervised the erection of a storm-proof pavilion designed to accommodate thousands. At its center, Raja Begum was held in an enormous iron cage, surrounded by an outer safety room. The captive was fed sparingly to kindle a wrathful appetite. Perhaps the prince expected the Swami to be the meal of reward.
Okay, and then the fight itself. Crowds from the city and suburbs bought tickets eagerly. The day of battle saw hundreds turned away for lack of seats. Many men broke through the tent openings or crowded any space below the galleries. And the Swami enters, scantily clad around the waist, otherwise unprotected by clothing. He opened the bolt on the door of the safety room and calmly locked it behind him. The tiger sensed blood. Leaping with a thunderous crash on his bars, he sent forth a fearsome welcome. The audience was hushed with pitiful fear. He seemed a meek lamb before the raging beast.
And the moment the cage door opens, Raja Begum is headlong upon him. His right hand is desperately torn. Human blood, the greatest treat a tiger can know, falls in appalling streams. And here's where the prophecy seems about to come true. But the Swami rallies. He banishes the sight of his gory fingers by thrusting them beneath his waistcloth. He swings his left arm in a bone-cracking blow. The beast reels back, swirls around the rear of the cage, and springs forward convulsively.
And the audience is screaming, "Shoot him! Kill the tiger!" Shrieks from everywhere. A guard's bullet went amiss because man and beast were moving so fast. And then the Swami mustered all his will force, bellowed fiercely, and landed a final concussive blow. The tiger collapsed and lay quietly. And Mukunda, listening to the story years later, can't help himself. He interjects, like a pussycat, and the Swami laughed in hearty appreciation.
But it wasn't over. Raja Begum was vanquished, but the Swami still had to fulfill the conditions. With his lacerated hands, he audaciously forced open the tiger's jaws. For a dramatic moment, he held his head within the yawning death trap. Then he bound the tiger by his neck to the cage bars with a chain and moved toward the door. But that fiend incarnate had stamina worthy of his supposed demoniac origin. With an incredible lunge, Raja Begum snapped the chain and leaped on his back, shoulder fast in his jaws. The Swami fell violently, but in a trice he had the tiger pinned beneath him. Under merciless blows, the treacherous animal sank into semi-consciousness. This time he secured him more carefully, and slowly left the cage.
And then the aftermath. The crowd's cheer broke as though from a single gigantic throat. He was honored and garlanded. Hundreds of gold pieces showered at his feet. The whole city entered a holiday period. Raja Begum was presented to him as promised, but the Swami felt no elation. It seemed that with his final exit from the cage, he had also closed the door on his worldly ambitions. A spiritual change had entered his heart.
And then came the prophecy's fulfillment. A woeful period followed. For 6 months, he lay near death from blood poisoning. And when he was finally well enough to return home, he made a humble confession to his father. "I know now that my teacher is the holy man who gave the wise warning. Oh, if I could only find him." And his longing was sincere, because one day the saint arrived unheralded. "Enough of tiger taming," the saint spoke with calm assurance. "Come with me. I will teach you to subdue the beasts of ignorance roaming in jungles of the human mind. You are used to an audience. Let it be a galaxy of angels, entertained by your thrilling mastery of yoga."
And the Swami was initiated into the spiritual path. He opened my soul doors, rusty and resistant with long disuse. Hand in hand, we soon set out for my training in the Himalayas. And that's where the story ends. Chandi and Mukunda bow at the Swami's feet, grateful for his vivid outline of a life truly cyclonic.
And you know what strikes me? The teaching at the heart of this chapter is karma as education, not punishment. The tiger wasn't punishing the Swami. The experience was the final lesson he needed to turn his extraordinary will from the outer world to the inner one. Everything he learned about mind over matter in the jungle applied just as well to the spiritual path, maybe more so.
And there's a beautiful symmetry across chapters 5 and 6. Ganda Baba had spectacular powers, but no spiritual depth, at least not the kind Mukunda was looking for. The Tiger Swami had spectacular powers too, but his transformation came through suffering, not through the powers themselves. Both chapters are saying the same thing from different angles. Powers aren't the point, transformation is.
And both encounters are preparing Mukunda for what he really needs. Not a guru who can do amazing things, a guru who can transform him. And that guru is getting closer with every chapter.
Next time, a levitating saint, Nagendra Nath Baduri, who floats above his seat in the afternoon like it's the most natural thing in the world. And his teaching is going to surprise you.
It's quieter than you'd expect from a man who defies gravity. Much quieter. See you next time.